The funeral was quiet. Rain tapped the chapel roof like a ticking clock, as if warning him the story wasn't over. Sheriff Lorna Briggs stood in the back row, hat in hand, watching the widower cry. He was good at it. The case was closed, the paperwork signed. Accidental overdose, nothing sinister. But K-9 units don't lie. And when Jasper, the department's German shepherd, pulled Lorna toward the garage behind that pretty farmhouse, something in her stomach twisted. The freezer lid wouldn't budge. Padlocked. No one asked why it was running in the middle of summer. They would soon. The first time K-9 Jasper yanked the leash, it caught Sheriff Lorna Briggs mid-step. Gravel crunched beneath her boots as she stumbled forward, her hand tightening on the leather strap. The German shepherd braced, ears forward, tail rigid. They were behind the Talbot farmhouse now. Sun flaring off the rusted tin roof. Shadows long and damp around the old, detached garage. "Easy," she muttered, but Jasper wasn't listening. The garage hadn't been included in the original walkthrough. The call came a week ago. Mara Talbot, 32, found unresponsive in her upstairs bathroom. Prescription bottle on the counter. Husband tried CPR, called it in. She was already gone. Toxicology report backed it up. Fentanyl, high dose. Seemed open and shut. But Lorna had spent 18 years wearing a badge in Hollis Creek, a town where folks knew each other's childhood sins. And the Talbots? They were squeaky clean. Church, PDA, her running the local clinic, him restoring old tractors for the museum circuit. Clean folks didn't die like that. Still, Lorna hadn't pushed it, until Jasper started acting like someone buried a scream. "Let him go," said a quiet voice behind her. It was Deputy Carter Hill. Young, ex-military, good instincts, but still green around the eyes. He held a crowbar like he'd been born to crack skulls, not padlocks. "You want a warrant first?" he asked. Lorna looked at the freezer, looked at Jasper, then at the sweat already breaking along Carter's collar. "No," she said. "This is the warrant." The garage door groaned as she forced it open. Inside, it smelled of old wood, mildew, and gasoline. Dust glinted in shafts of amber light. From a cracked window, a riding mower sat in one corner. A pegboard of tools hung silent. And near the back wall, the freezer. White, large, padlocked. The dog whined. Lorna stepped forward. The air grew colder the closer she got, but not cold like frost. Cold like dread, like memories she didn't want to touch. "Crowbar," she said. Carter handed it over. The metal creaked as Lorna wedged it under the hasp. The padlock gave after a single jerk. She froze. Not out of fear, out of something older, something buried. She opened the lid. No smell hit her. No sound escaped. That somehow made it worse. Inside, wrapped tightly in silver heat blankets, were three things. A red scarf, frayed at the edges. A manila envelope, stamped for Lorna in thick black marker. A small, sealed cooler, duct taped shut. Lorna didn't move. The edges of her world blurred. Her mouth was dry. Jasper sat beside her now, tail thumping once, like punctuation. Carter leaned forward. "What the hell is that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the envelope, the paper warm against her palm despite the chill. They didn't open the cooler. Not yet. They brought it all back to the station. Evidence protocol was followed, but barely. No one talked much. Even Jasper seemed subdued, curled by the station heater, like a soldier after a firefight. In her office, Lorna stared at the envelope, her name in thick black letters. But no return address. Just that one word. Lorna. Personal. Deliberate. She sliced it open with a pocket knife. Inside was a single sheet of yellow paper, ripped from a legal pad. The handwriting was messy but readable. She read it once, twice, then folded it quietly. It wasn't an accident. That was the first line. Mar was going to tell you. Second line. But she didn't trust anyone else. Not after what happened with Micah. You remember that, don't you? Lorna stood. Hard. Her chair clattered against the wall. Carter knocked once, stepped in, caught the look on her face. You okay? She didn't answer. He glanced at the note, at the sealed cooler still locked inside the station fridge. Want me to call the coroner? She shook her head. Not yet. I need to talk to someone. The Talbot house sat too pretty for the secrets it held. White siding, blue shutters. A porch swing that still swayed gently from the morning breeze. Inside, John Talbot was chopping carrots in the kitchen. Calm, clean, morning with a little too much order. You have a key to the garage freezer? Lorna asked without greeting. He blinked, slowly. Sure, he said. Why? Because it was locked. He set the knife down. It's just storage. Old hunting meat. You hunt? He hesitated. Used to. Before Mara. You keep trophies? Now the pause was longer. No. Lorna studied his face. Not just his words, his breathing. People forget to control that part when they lie. John's lips smiled, but his chest was rigid. I think your wife was afraid of you, she said flatly. The smile faltered. Excuse me? She tried to contact me last year. Called twice. Hung up both times. That doesn't mean. She used to work in the clinic. She knew the signs of fentanyl lacing. She wouldn't have dosed herself like that. You think I think you had something in that garage you didn't want found. John stepped forward. Not threatening. Calculated. Sheriff, I think grief is clouding your judgment. Lorna didn't blink. I haven't opened that cooler yet. Want to tell me what's inside? His eyes flicked, just briefly to the left, toward the dining room hallway. And then he said it. I want a lawyer. Back at the station, Carter was already pulling files. There's no record of a Micah connected to Mara, he said. No sibling. No cousin. Could be a patient? Lorna rubbed her temples. Micah wasn't a person. It was a case. Carter looked up. Micah Jarrett. 6 years ago. 7-year-old boy. Vanished from the county fair. Remember? Vaguely. Wasn't he? Never found. No body. No leads. But Mara was the nurse on site that night. She was the last one to patch up a scraped knee before he disappeared. Carter's voice dropped. You think the cooler? Lorna didn't answer. She didn't have to. The cooler took 3 cuts to open. The tape was layered thick, and even when it gave, the lid seemed to resist. Carter stood by with gloves. Jasper didn't bark, just paced. Inside, under 2 more layers of heat blankets and ice packs, was a small plastic box. Blue, child-sized, the kind used for keepsakes. Lorna pulled it out. Inside were baby teeth, each one labeled, each one dated. Some were newer than others. There were 16 teeth in the box. Lorna counted them twice. Some were still tinged with dried blood, nestled in cotton wads like forgotten jewelry. Most were baby molars and incisors, but 4 in the middle row were adult, labeled, dated. The most recent tag read, 6/19 J. Lorna didn't speak. She stared silent, as if her silence might undo what she saw. Carter leaned over, his throat tightening. This isn't a trophy box, he whispered. It's a goddamn logbook. Jasper gave a low whine from a hallway. Lorna slowly closed the box, gloves creaking. Get CSU on this. Full sweep of the garage. I want every hair, fiber, print, and I want John Talbot under a 48-hour psych hold. Pick him up if he so much as breathes weird. Carter hesitated. You think Mara knew? She was going to tell me. The note said she didn't trust anyone else. You think he found out? Lorna didn't answer, because if he had, that would explain the overdose. But not the teeth. By morning, the town of Hollis Creek hummed with rumors. The Talbots were too visible, too perfect. Whispers slithered through the bakery, the gas station, the pews of Holy Mercy Church. John Talbot didn't fight the psych hold. He lay in his cell, back to the door, staring at the wall. The only thing he'd said since they booked him was, I told her not to dig. The old Talbot property sat on 7 acres, wide enough for privacy, thick enough with trees to hide whatever a man didn't want seen. Lorna stood in the backyard, eyes on the woods. The place felt wrong now, not just wrong, cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature. The kind that comes from something being buried. Jasper sniffed the breeze, then padded toward the tree line. Lorna followed. They passed an old swing set, swallowed by vines, past a dried-up koi pond. And then, behind a half-collapsed shed, they found it. A door, half buried. Steel, no handle, just a key lock and scratches all along the frame. Storm shelter, Lorna muttered, not on any survey record. She called it in. Carter arrived with 2 bolt cutters and a crowbar. They worked silently, sweating despite the breeze. The lock finally gave a sound like bone snapping. Lorna flinched. The door opened to black. She clicked her flashlight on. "Stay behind me," she told Carter. The steps creaked downward, musty and wet. Moldy air hit her nose, thick with rot and rust. The walls were concrete, no light fixtures, and at the bottom of the narrow stairs, a single bulb hanging from a chain. Lorna tugged it. It flickered. Once, twice, the room came into view. There was a cot, a mirror, a child's backpack, a wall of photos, pinned with pushpins and overlapping in a chaotic web. Each photo showed a different child, some smiling, some mid-blink. Most were Polaroids. Some looked new. And pinned in the center, slightly crooked, was a photo of a boy in a striped hoodie, holding a blue balloon. Micah Jarrett. The bunker was real, which meant everything Mara feared was real, too. Lorna's throat burned. "I don't think she overdosed," Carter said behind her. "I think he killed her, to shut her up." Lorna turned. "No," she said quietly. "He didn't kill her. He's too careful for that. But I bet you she threatened to go public. I bet she found the teeth, or came down here. And I bet she wrote that note because she knew he'd get to her first. But why leave the note for you?" Lorna looked at him. "Because she knew I never believed the case was closed. They pulled all records of missing children in a 60-mile radius over the last 12 years. There were 7 cases flagged. 2 of them, including Micah Jarrett, were still active. The others were cold. Children who had supposedly run away, drowned, or got lost in the woods. CSU began matching teeth against dental records. 3 were already identified by the end of the day. That night, Lorna sat on her porch, nursing black coffee in silence. The woods crackled beyond the backyard fence. Somewhere, a barn owl shrieked. Jasper sat beside her, eyes on the tree line like he was waiting for something to come back. Lorna looked at the photo of Mara she'd taken from the house, a shot from a church picnic, holding a plate of pie, hair windblown, cheeks flushed with laughter. She flipped it over. In tiny handwriting. They only looked like people. The next morning, John Talbot broke his silence. "I want a deal," he said. Lorna stood behind a one-way mirror, arms crossed. The DA leaned in. "What kind of deal?" John leaned forward. "I can give you names." In the interview room, John's face was different. Smug, calculated. Something had shifted in him. A man suddenly aware of how valuable his silence was. Lorna entered. "You said you have names," she said. He smiled faintly. Mara wasn't the only one helping. She didn't help. She tried to stop it. John raised a brow. "That why she called you? Or was she just feeling guilty?" Lorna's fists clenched. "You think she didn't know how that freezer got filled?" he asked softly. "You son of a—" "I'm not the only one, Sheriff. You dig far enough, you'll see. This town's been sick for years. I just kept the infection from spreading. You're going away for the rest of your life." "Maybe," he said, "but when the others start to panic, they'll run. And when they run, kids die." That night, Lorna visited Micah Jarrett's mother, Delia. She lived alone in a cottage near the edge of Lake Bellamy. Years hadn't been kind. Her eyes were yellow from whiskey. Hands trembled as she opened the door. "He's alive," Lorna said. "Or was. We found his picture, some of his things." Delia sank into the porch chair. "He'd be 13 now." Lorna nodded. "There's a chance we can recover some remains. Or something to give you peace." Delia looked up. "Peace isn't what I want. I want them to scream." Later, Lorna opened a file from a box marked Confidential, 2019. Inside was the original report from the night Micah vanished. She flipped through the pages until she hit the witness statement. One sentence caught her eye. "I saw him walking with a woman in scrubs." Lorna froze. The date matched. The time matched. And there had only been one nurse on duty that night. Mara Talbot. Lorna didn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, boots still on, the file open on the table beside an untouched cup of coffee. The walls of her house creaked with the night. A wind came to the dog flap in the mudroom, but Jasper didn't move. He just lay in the hall, watching her. The witness had been 12 years old at the time, said he saw a boy being led away by a woman in nurse scrubs, but the detail had been buried in the noise. No one followed up, not even her. Back then, Lorna was too busy keeping the town calm, too busy managing politics and parents screaming on courthouse steps. And Mara was silent. She knew something, but didn't talk. Not then. The question now wasn't if she was involved. It was how deep. Was she a bystander? An accomplice? Or something worse? By noon the next day, CSU pulled a partial DNA match from the cooler. One of the molars matched Micah Jarrett's profile. Not just Micah, his sister, too. Ellie Jarrett. She died of pneumonia 3 years after Micah vanished. She was 5 when he disappeared, which made it impossible, because Ellie's DNA should have never been anywhere near that garage. Unless the Talbots had her too. Unless Lorna walked into the evidence room, hands shaking. "Pull every missing child report connected to siblings," she told Carter. "I want files where one child vanished and the other died later. Sudden illness, unexpected trauma. Anything that doesn't add up." Carter hesitated. How far back? All of it. The pattern wasn't obvious until they put it on the board. 4 families, each with 2 or more children. In every case, one disappeared. The other died within 2 years. No cause ever strongly confirmed. All within the Tri-County region. And in every case, at least one adult from each family was treated at Hollis Creek Clinic under Mara Talbot's supervision. Lorna stood back, heart hammering. This wasn't just about John. This wasn't even just about the freezer. This was about control, about silence, about choosing which lives mattered. "I need to exhume a body," she said. The court order came faster than she expected. Maybe because the DA was scared. Maybe because the judge had kids. Ellie Jarrett had been buried in the church cemetery, under a cherry tree that hadn't bloomed in years. The grave was shallow. Cheaper funerals usually were. They dug in silence. The casket came up whole. When they opened it, Lorna stared into the face of a child who was not Ellie Jarrett. Wrong hair color. Wrong jawline. No photo matched. The grave had been a lie. Someone buried a decoy. John Talbot confessed the next morning, but not the way they hoped. He didn't talk about accomplices. He didn't mention other victims. He just said one thing. Mara was trying to undo it. I told her it was too late. Then he smiled. "You don't kill the root by trimming the branches." Lorna returned to the clinic. The building had closed after Mara's death, shuttered in quiet mourning, untouched since. But she still had keys. Jasper was at her side again. His nose pressed to the floor the moment they walked in. His tail dropped low. They moved room by room. Sterile lights. Clean counters. A faint tang of antiseptic still hung in the air. Then Jasper stopped. Outside exam room 2. He pawed at the baseboard once. Twice. Lorna knelt and pulled it loose. Behind it, a small lead-line safe bolted to studs. She pried it open with a screwdriver from the janitor's closet. Inside were 4 vials, carefully labeled. Beside them, a thumb drive. She took everything. The lab confirmed it 2 hours later. The vials held traces of a powerful benzodiazepine cocktail, enough to immobilize a grown adult for hours. In small children, it would induce sleep, maybe memory loss. The drugs were untraceable in low doses, perfect for making a child forget what they'd seen, or forget who took them. The drive contained audio. Mara's voice. Fragments. They said it was only temporary. I didn't want to help, but they told me the kids were going to be placed in worse homes. I thought I could protect at least some of them. Then later, John said they were looking into the Jarrett boy, that if I didn't help, someone else would. And finally, if I die, Lorna, go to freezer, the one behind the garage. You'll find the rest there. They trace financials, shell payments, quiet grants, unregistered adoptions, children placed in homes across state lines under false names, disguised as orphans. Some even went to couples who didn't know the truth, but some were never found. Lorna stood in the conference room surrounded by faces on a corkboard. She didn't recognize most of them, but she knew their eyes, some frightened, some numb, all waiting for someone to care. In the end, John Talbot pled guilty to 6 counts of conspiracy, unlawful imprisonment, and possession of illicit substances with intent to distribute. They never charged him with murder, because they never found bodies. On the last morning of August, Lorna stood alone at Mara Talbot's grave. She'd had the headstone changed. She tried to stop it. That matters. A cardinal landed on the fence behind her. Jasper sat nearby, not barking, just watching the wind stir the grass. Lorna took a deep breath, let out slow. The town of Hollis Creek would heal, probably, or pretend to, but she knew what it cost to look too closely at the quiet ones. The ones who bake cookies, smile in church, hide locked freezers in their garage. She put her hand on Jasper's head. "Good boy," she whispered, then turned toward home.